If you like to see how I made this delicious Jamaican curry chicken recipe, please keep watching. Hey everyone, so today we're going to be making some Jamaican curry chicken. So the chicken is already pre-washed with vinegar and water, and I'm using the legs and the thighs. So for Jamaican curry chicken, you usually want to cut it up in small pieces. So right here, I'm just going to cut it up and take off any fat that you see. So the skin is definitely optional. I'm personally going to keep the skin on, but you don't have to keep it on. You can definitely take it off if you don't want to keep it on. So right here I'm just cutting up in smaller pieces, and typically when Jamaicans make curry chicken, it's usually cut up in smaller pieces, like around bite-sized pieces. Um, some people might want to like bigger pieces, but this is definitely a personal preference and it's optional, but typically you don't want to leave it whole. So right here, I've shown you how to cut up the chicken. So I'm just scoring it and then breaking it with the back of the knife. So now that the chicken is all cut up, we're going to cut up the vegetables. So I'm just gonna get some thyme and I'm gonna cut that in half, and I'm going to use a half of an onion. And these are the amount of vegetables is definitely optional. It's the not optional, but it's dependent on how much chicken you're going to use. So if you have more chicken, then you're going to want to use more vegetables. So use your discretion. And I'm using about a quarter of a bell pepper, and I'm using about one carrot. And for the carrot, I'm going to cut it up into smaller pieces. And the carrot is also another optional thing that you can add to it. I'm just using this to add some color to the dish. So after the I cut up the carrots, then I'm just going to get the potatoes. And the potatoes that we're going to use is Irish potatoes or Idaho potatoes or whatever you guys call it in different places. So we're going to cut up the potatoes and we're not going to add it to the chicken because this is going to get added to the chicken last when it's almost cooked. So we're just going to cut up the potatoes and we're going to cut it up in about small to medium sized pieces. You don't want to cut it up too small because you don't want it to get dissolved out during the cooking process. You're just going to want to cut it up big enough so it's just right basically. So, and you're going to want to add the potatoes to the water to keep it from oxidizing and turning brown. So that's why we have the water in this step. And after we cut it up, we're just going to set it aside for So I forgot to add the Scotch bonnet pepper to this dish. So I'm added about a half of Scotch bonnet pepper to my container. And I'm also going to add some garlic. And the amount of garlic is dependent on how much chicken you have. So I'm adding about 2.5 teaspoons of garlic. So after I add the garlic, then I'm going to season it. So I'm going to use some garlic powder. And the amount of seasonings that I'm using, we're just going to sprinkle a little bit of everything to the container. So you can see how much I'm adding here, but just sprinkle a little bit of everything. And this is basically a way of how Jamaicans or other Caribbean people season their meat. We don't usually measure anything. So you're just gonna season a little bit of everything to it. So far I've added some garlic powder, some black pepper, some chicken and poultry seasoning, some adobo, and some Larry seasoning. So after that, then I'm going to add some of my curry powder, and I'm using the Betapac curry powder. This is the best curry powder out there. So if you can't find the Betapac curry powder, please find the Betapac curry powder because your curry chicken won't taste the same without this curry powder. I'm telling you. So I'm gonna put a picture up of how it looks, but please, please, please don't forget that. And next, we're just gonna use our hands and massage everything inside and use a gloves, please. I don't have any gloves, so I'm using my hands. If you don't want your hands to stain, please use a glove. So next we're gonna get the pot that we're gonna use to make our curry chicken, and we're gonna put the fire about on medium. So after we put it on medium, then we're going to add the oil to the pot. I'm using the olive oil in mine. I'm adding about, let's say, about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. So next for curry chicken, then you're gonna burn the curry. That's what we call it. So I'm gonna add about 1 teaspoon of garlic to my oil, and then I'm going to add some curry powder, and I'm adding about a tablespoon, a heaping tablespoon, as you can see, and I'm just going to mix that around until the curry change color. And you want to keep mixing this, because if you don't keep mixing this, you're going to burn the garlic. Remember, garlic burns easily, so keep moving this around until you see the color change. And trust me, when you do this process, you're going to smell that the whole place smelling like that wonderful Betapac curry powder. And as you can see, the color is changing darker, the curry powder, and you're seeing that the garlic is browning. So since it's where we want it, then we're gonna add a chicken. So we're adding the chicken to the pot, and we're not going to add the seasonings, just the chicken. So when you add it, make sure you take off all the seasonings off the chicken before you put it into the pot. So after that, we're gonna add all the chicken in, and after we add all the chicken in, then we're just going to mix it around. So right here, you're gonna see me mixing it, just to try to prevent it from burning. Some of the garlic did burn a little, but it's okay. Don't lose your mind, and it's not going to taste bad or anything. So just add the rest of the chicken inside, and after you add the rest of the chicken inside, then we're going to mix it again, and we're going to cover the pot um, we're gonna cover the pot for about 10 to 15 minutes. And after we cover it for about 10 to 15 minutes, you're gonna see that it's going to continue cooking. And throughout the process of covering it, I'm going to just turn it once in a while. So I saw that it needed a little bit more oil, so I added a little bit more oil, and then I'm going to cover the So pot. It's been about 10 minutes. So throughout the 10 minutes, I've been turning the chicken, and you can see that it did create some gravy at the bottom, and it's just going to continue to do this. So I'm going to continue turning it, and I'm going to cover back the pot for about another 5 minutes. And it's just going to, this part is key. So don't just add the water after you add all the chicken inside. You have to do this step. It's definitely key in the whole process. So it's been about another 5 minutes, and the curry chicken is looking good. This is how you want it to look at this point in the cooking process. So far it's just been about 15 minutes covered. Um, and you can see that it's making some gravy at the bottom of the pot, and we have some curry goodness at the bottom. So now we're just gonna add our vegetables at this point after the 15-minute mark. So you're gonna see me put all the vegetables inside the pot, and then that same container that I have those vegetables in, I'm just gonna add some water. And you don't want to add too much water, because remember, curry, when it comes to chicken, it makes water. So if you add too much water, it's just gonna dilute everything, and you don't want that. So as you can see, I'm adding enough water just to cover, barely, just cover the chicken. And throughout the process, we're going to add more water when necessary. So right now I'm just mixing everything up, and then I'm gonna cover the pot. And then later on in the cooking process, when we come back, we're gonna taste it to make sure all the flavors are melded together. Then if we need to add more seasoning, then we can add more seasoning at that So point. At this point in the cooking process, it's been about 10 minutes. 10 minutes have passed, so we're just gonna stir everything together. And then when we stir everything together, I'm going to taste it to see if if everything, the flavors are is where it's supposed to be, and we're gonna just see if we need to add any more seasoning. So remember, throughout the cooking of anything, you always want to taste. So when you taste it, if you think it needs more seasoning, then you're gonna add a little bit of whatever. But mine was perfect and I didn't need any more seasoning, so I'm just gonna cover back the So at pot. This point, it's been about another 10 to 15 minutes since you've seen the last clip, and you can see the progression of how the curry chicken is looking and how it's supposed to look. So at this point, the chicken is basically almost finished. So since the chicken is almost finished, it's time for the potatoes that we cut up earlier. So we're just gonna drain the water from the potatoes that we had, and we're going to add it to it. And I added about 2 tablespoons of butter at this point as well. So I use unsalted butter. It's better to use unsalted butter because if you use salted butter, it's going to make your food more saltier than it is. So if your food is perfect, then it might be too salty. So always try to use unsalted butter if you have unsalted butter. So I'm just stirring everything together, making sure the potatoes are inside the gravy, and then we're just going to cover the pot and leave it to cook for about another 5 minutes, just until the potatoes are basically cooked. So it's been about 5 to 6 more minutes, and guess what? The curry chicken is cooked. It's looking good. The gravy is thick and nice, and guess what? Then it's time to eat some good food. So right here, I'm just gonna show you how the chicken is basically looking and how the gravy is, and it's nice. And if you know curry chicken, or the more you leave it out, the thicker the gravy is gonna be. So the gravy is not thin, it's perfect at this point.